The meeting of the Committee of Accountability, Finance, and Personnel of the School Board of Directors will please come to an order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Garcia.
Present.
Director Herndon.
Present.
Director Jackson.
Present.
Director Leonard has asked to be excused. Director Zombor.
Present.
There's 4 members present.
The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so, and asks those who do not wish to participate to please remain silent during the pledge. This meeting is being conducted from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is also being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Seis 6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to our secretary, Ms. Koala. Virtual speakers are asked to remain on the platform until you are called upon. After speaking, virtual speakers may follow the rest of the meeting using the broadcast information previously mentioned. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a fair chance to speak, the Chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the Board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, or fax it to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or the administration, are to be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure a good order of the meeting, harassment and intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages in such harassing or intimidating words or actions will immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called and the offending parties will be moved from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, the individual will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, no one other than members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage during or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the minutes, agendas, and meetings page of the MPS website. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is action on monthly personnel matters, action on classified personnel transactions, action on certificated appointments, action on leaves of absence, report on resignations and retirements, and the affirmative action report. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon board approval.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. We're asking for your approval of the monthly personnel and reporting items before you. Adria Matalini, Chief of Human Resources Officer, is here with me this evening, and we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make or ask any questions? None. Do any members of the public wish to make comments?
We have no request to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Zambor?
I move approval of the administration's recommendation on monthly personnel matters.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zombor's motion to approve the administration's recommendations, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 2 is action on recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. The administration recommends that the board approve the promotions, appointments, leaves, and limited-term employment contracts as listed in the attachments to the item to be effective upon approval by the board.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we're requesting your approval of this item as it outlines this month's administrative appointments, promotions, reclassifications, salary adjustments, and LTE contracts. Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me this evening, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no speaker request for this item.
Then what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Jackson.
I make a, I make a motion that we accept the recommended administrative appointments and promotions, reassignments, and classifications.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and limited-term employment contracts. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zambor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
All right. Small congratulatory to everyone on the list here. I know it'll be official on this later in this week's meeting, but just want to make sure that we take the time to appreciate and celebrate everyone's promotions and recommended adjustments. So congrats to anyone here in the audience and listening. All right, before we proceed to the next item, on behalf of this committee, I would like to congratulate all of the items. Oh, we already did it. All right, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 3, action on a request to approve the proposed 2024-25 district-wide school calendar. The administration recommends that the board approve the proposed 24-25 district-wide school calendar as presented in the attachment to this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, results of the 2023 Strategic Plan Survey communicated the majority of stakeholders responding were in favor of one calendar. As such, the administration has collaborated with stakeholders to develop a single district-wide calendar for the 2024-2025 school year and ask the board's approval of this calendar. This evening, I have with me Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, to present this item along with a number of other members from the team. At this time, I'm going to ask Adria to start the presentation, after which we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Adria.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Adria Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. Tonight, I will be presenting the results of the school calendar survey and a school calendar for the board to consider for the 24-25 school year. As with all presentations, we start with the 5 priorities for success. This school calendar item touches upon improving district and school culture, ensuring fiscal responsibility and transparency, and lastly, strengthening communication and collaboration. On this slide, you can see a broad summary of the MPS strategic plan. The school calendar, in particular the initiative to move to one school calendar, is embedded in the plan as one of its special projects. As I mentioned, the initiative to move to a single district calendar was born out of the strategic plan. In the strategic plan survey that went out at the beginning of this calendar year, participants were asked if they supported the idea of moving to a single district calendar. Overwhelmingly, the participants were in favor of a move to one calendar. 81% of families supported one calendar, 75% of staff supported one calendar, and 62% of students supported one calendar. Based upon the strategic plan survey results, a special project was established to move forward with the one school calendar initiative. As part of the initiative, a committee was established that developed a follow-up survey to determine the calendar preference of stakeholders. I personally would like to take a moment to thank the members of the calendar committee for their contributions and feedback. It was invaluable and helped move this initiative forward. The survey regarding calendar preference was launched on November 20th of 2023, and it had a soft close on December 3rd of 2023, meaning we indicated that the survey would close on December 3rd, but we have kept it open to this point to continue to receive feedback and responses from any stakeholders that continued and wanted to participate. The survey pool consisted of MPS families, students, staff, and community members. The survey was relatively short and asked respondents the following questions. What was their relationship to MPS? In other words, were they a parent or a guardian? Were they a staff member, a student, etc.? Respondents were asked to rank 3 calendar options. The options were an early start calendar, a traditional calendar, and a late August start calendar, which would be considered the middle option or compromised option. At the time of this PowerPoint, we had 10,987 respondents. I would like to take a moment to thank all respondents for taking the time to complete the survey and provide feedback. Next, I'm going to walk through the data points from the survey. Here you can see a breakdown of the survey participants. 37% of the respondents were parents or guardians of an MPS student. 37% of the respondents were school-based employees. 13% of the respondents were district-based employees. 7% of the respondents were students. 5% of the respondents were community members, and 1% of the respondents were parents or guardians of non-MPS students. When it came to calendar affiliation, which you can see on the pie chart on the right, 37% of the respondents indicated they're affiliated with the early start calendar. 51% of respondents indicated they're affiliated with the traditional calendar. 9% stated they indicated they were affiliated with both calendars. 2% said they didn't know what calendar they were affiliated with, and 1% indicated that they didn't have any affiliation to any calendar. Survey responses. As you can see from this pie chart, 41% of respondents indicated that traditional calendar was their calendar of choice. 31% of responses indicated that the alternate or the late August start calendar was their calendar of choice, and 28% of respondents indicated the early start calendar was their calendar of choice. On this slide here, we have the results broken down by calendar and displayed side by side for comparison purposes. For the early start calendar, 56% of respondents selected it as their third choice. 26% selected it as their third choice, and 16% selected it as their second choice. For the alternate or the late August start calendar, 63% of respondents selected it as their second choice, 31% selected it as their first choice, and 6% selected it as their third choice. For the traditional calendar, 41% of the respondents selected it as their first choice, 37% selected it as their third choice, and 22% selected it as their second choice. In addition to asking respondents to identify their calendar preference, respondents were asked to provide any feedback, comments, or concerns they had regarding moving to one calendar. This graphic illustrates the frequent topics addressed in the comments. The larger the bubble, the more frequently the topic was raised in the comments. As you can see, by far, the largest comment or concern raised by respondents was air conditioning and the hot weather in August. There were also comments centered around how the calendar would impact transportation, how a move to a traditional calendar would impact IB and AP programming. Some comments related to this change being proposed and happening too fast, too late in the year, and could impact family and staff vacation plans. Daycare was also raised as a concern, as some indicated that if an early start or a late August start was selected for all schools, there might be some trouble getting daycare opportunities later when it came to the end of the year in May or in June. Some staff on the early start calendar referenced concerns with the timing of their first paycheck in the next school year if the district moved to a traditional calendar. They would have to wait an additional 2 or 3 weeks before getting their first paycheck for the year. In response to the feedback provided, the administration is prepared to address the potential impacts of moving to a single calendar. As mentioned, air conditioning was the largest concern raised by respondents of the survey. A move to the traditional calendar start would put the district in the best position to avoid excessive heat days during the upcoming school year. Transportation was another concern raised by respondents, in particular the concern of bus pickup times being negatively affected, along with the ability of bus companies to accommodate all schools starting at one time. There are potential impacts to transportation, and I'm going to have David Fiferick step up here for a moment to elaborate on what these potential impacts could be, including potential cost savings and bus driver impact. David?
Thank you. Members of the committee, David Solik, Fiferick, Director of Business and Transportation Services, Milwaukee Public Schools. In response to the questions about transportation, I'll make generalized comments that basically financially and operationally we stand to benefit from one calendar, and I'll break that down a little bit more incrementally. But from a fiscal standpoint, we stand to reduce expenditures by about $2 million for one calendar as opposed to 2 calendars. The logic behind that is really the August 14th start date requires effectively an extra 28 days at the beginning of August, and then of course at the end of June, where bus companies have a driver running a single tier as opposed to running all 3 tiers, because you got the 2 weeks for the early start calendar at the beginning, and then of course the 2 weeks at the end of the year when the early start calendar ends and the traditional calendar is still going. Based on some of our contract language, we know that bidding is a product of fixed costs and then the variable costs, which is time and mileage. With the extra 14 days and less than 3 tiers running, and again 90% of our routes during the first 2 weeks of the early start calendar are running because all second tiers are high schools, which are effectively early tier schools. We are basically paying 50% of the cost of the bus when only 33% of the runs are running. And again, this is a product of, you can't bring in a driver for 1 hour in the morning and a driver for 1 hour in the afternoon. You can't pay the cost of a lease with 33% of your service expectations running for 28 days. So in response to that, basically, we have $2 million of expenditures that go towards accommodating a less optimal state from a transportation perspective. So eliminating those 28 days would reduce our expenditure line by about $2 million. Operationally, what we see is kind of a condensed availability for us to pivot from the regular school year to the planning phases of the following school year. And so the summertime is typically a good time for us to do the tasks that we can't otherwise do with respects to auditing. We got to get inside of buses. We need to make sure that they're spec'd out properly. In order to do that, they need to be on the lot. And so when we have, again, those 2 weeks at the beginning of the year for the early start, and then the 2 weeks at the end of the year, we effectively lose a month of planning and auditing from an operational standpoint. So there's some questions about whether or not it helps us or does not help us. Well, I would emphatically say that it absolutely helps us to strategically plan better when we have more time to work with companies when buses aren't moving. A question came up with respects to drivers and if we feel as if there's a negative impact with the longer break. So if you were to do one calendar, you effectively have extra couple weeks of a month of off time. Well, what we see with our drivers is a good chunk of our employee drivers have young children. So many of them cannot come back between August 14th and September. So I don't want to say we struggle, but we do have an impact with those families that or those drivers that have a young one in the home that has not started yet, and of course then they elect to not come back. We have less of the problem on the back end of the school year because it's primarily the high school kids that are getting out earlier, and of course drivers are less not as concerned with a teenager getting home without a parent being available. So we do end up getting a good chunk of drivers in September that do not come back on the August 14th start date for the early start. So I don't want to say, again, I'm not going to use the word struggle, but we do have to plan accordingly for less than full staffing from a driver standpoint for those 2 weeks. The last piece from our end is that, again, if you're really only making an hour in the morning and an hour at the end of the day, we have a number of drivers that just won't answer the phone between the 2 week period because it's not financially beneficial for them to do 2 hours worth of work for 2 weeks and then effectively giving up 8 to 10 hours of their day because only one of the 3 tiers for most of those runs are serviced during that 2 week period. So from an operational standpoint, centrally we get to plan a little bit better. We get a little bit more time. There's really no overlap between summer school and then the traditional school year because right now currently we have summer school starting. When the to accommodate those students that get out on the early start calendar, we have a little bit of an overlap between the beginning of the early start summer school and then the traditional school year not quite being done yet. So it does create a little bit of a pinch for us operationally if we were to move to one calendar, that would alleviate a lot of those time constraints that we have. And then I'll leave it at that unless you have questions for me, of course.
Thank you, David. At this time, we also want to reference some other concerns that were raised, in particular. IB and AP programming was a common concern that was raised by the respondents in the survey. In particular, if moved to a traditional calendar, would IB and AP students be adequately prepared for testing, or would they be negatively impacted in any way if we move to a traditional start? I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Mims Howell to clarify the requirements of IB and AP and go over some of the actions the administration is prepared to take if the board approves a traditional calendar move.
Thank you. Chair Garcia, members of the committee, I'm Jennifer Mims Howell, Chief Academic Officer. Currently, both Milwaukee Public School calendars, early and traditional start, have students attending the same number of days. The question is, are students attending more hours before May 1st on the calendar? Yes. For our early start calendar, students have more seat time prior to the May 1st required hours for the IB and AP exams. Milwaukee Public Schools offers standard level courses. This is a one-year course, which is 150 hours, and our high-level courses are courses for IB offered over 2 years, which require 240 hours. Currently, students have the opportunity to attend Saturday academies to have these hours. In moving forward with the one calendar, our Summer Academy is offering a summer specialty camp to assist IB students in reaching the required hours. Depending on the number of hours needed, once looking at the finalized calendar, we are willing to propose that we will offer Saturday breakfast clubs, Saturday academies, as well as other opportunities to allow students to earn the seat time needed for the May 1st exams. Thank you.
Lastly, I would like to take a moment to address the potential pay issue raised by moving to a traditional start calendar. The administration acknowledges that staff currently on the early start calendar would have a longer break before the 24-25 school year than they currently experience. They will start the school year later and subsequently receive their first paycheck later. This would be a one-time pay point that would be experienced. The administration will have summer school opportunities for staff to work and is committed to working with MTEA to identify potential work opportunities for staff in August. We will work with Educators Credit Union as well to publicize and continue to offer staff the opportunity to spread paychecks out over the summer months to help ease the burden and look at other opportunities and ways to support our staff in making that transition for that 3-week period. The administration recommends that the board approve the attached school calendar with September 3rd start date for students as the single district calendar for the 24-25 school year. This calendar reflects the desire of the survey participants, provide convenience to families and staff, provides an opportunity for cost savings, and puts the district in the best position to complete ESSER projects over the summer. That concludes our presentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. We do have quite a bit of public testimony, but before we go to that, I'd just like to get a quick round of committee members if you have any comments or questions.
I do, but I can wait.
You can wait? Can wait? Okay. All right, then we can start with our public testimony here. We have Mr. David Benz.
Hi, my name is David Benz, B-E-N-Z. I'm coming out to speak against the approval of the single start calendar. One of the points that was not raised that I think everybody should take into account is the high school exam schedule. Right now, our seniors, juniors, everybody is taking their final exams, and it's a nice time to wrap it up right before the holiday season, before that learning loss that occurs over the next 10, 15 days. Depending on how long winter break becomes. And then second thing that I think we should be considering is the impact on IB and AP schools. I see kind of down on the list, number 17, but as an AP teacher, I need those 3 weeks also. To help prepare my students to get them ready for calculus. The AP calculus exam is tough, and every day really matters in that class, and participation in those Saturday academies is not as high as when they come into my classroom and I get to teach them every day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Up next, we have Ms. Stacy Knitter.
Hi, I'm Stacy Knitter, K-N-I-T-T-E-R. I am a special education teacher at McDowell Montessori, and I'm also an alumna of Ronald Reagan High School. Having been on both sides of the debate between a single calendar or two-calendar system, I am here speaking in favor of a singular calendar for MPS schools and would like to speak through the lens of our students who receive special education services. The beginning of the school year is an important time for identifying students who may require additional services. When a student is referred for evaluation, it begins a 60-day timeline before a determination can be made and an IEP can be written. However, most members of the initial evaluative teams follow the traditional calendar, meaning that students at early start schools cannot begin their evaluation process until 3 to 4 weeks into their school year, meaning they may not begin receiving those vital services from qualified professionals until 12 weeks into the school year at the earliest. Many service providers, such as speech paths and occupational therapists, also service students at multiple schools. And if a service provider follows the traditional calendar but has a student at a school with an early start calendar, their students with existing IEPs may not begin receiving services until that traditional calendar begins. Many students rely on consistent services to prevent skill regression, and this 3 to 4 week break in services, in addition to the regular summer break, can have a significant impact on those students' abilities to meet their IEP goals and grade level standards. This regression of skills is usually addressed through ESY or extended school year. Students who demonstrate a loss of skills after a break in services are enrolled in ESY during the summer break and continue receiving those services when school is not in session. However, at this time, ESY services for schools on the early start calendar are only available for middle and high school students. Students at the elementary level are only able to enroll in ESY classes that follow the traditional calendar and begin over a month after their school year has ended. So when making your decision about unifying the calendars, please be sure to consider students who require special ed services and how the discrepancies between the calendars can affect their access to greatly needed services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knitter. Up next, we have Ms. Heather Boxell.
Hello, my name is Heather Boxell. It's Boxill. I have been a primary teacher, which is K3 through K5 at McDowell Montessori School for the last 13 years. And I want to speak tonight in support of a one calendar proposal. We are one of the few schools on the early start calendar that services elementary school aged children. And we are the only Montessori school on the early start calendar, which, while I completely understand and respect the importance of an IB program and the opportunities it provides for our students, it also is difficult to be a Montessori school that is cut off from its cohort of other Montessori schools. We cannot have any citywide PD because we don't have any similar days other than one a year. And this year it is Thursday, which is when we have to make up one of our heat days that we had in August. So we don't get to participate in that citywide PD with our cohort of schools. It's also really difficult at the beginning of the year, as often the Montessori PD is not prepared in time for our school year to start. And therefore we are attending traditional school PD that doesn't apply to us or affect us in any way or help us in furthering our practice when the other Montessori schools get Montessori specific PD. So we kind of are at a disadvantage in that way as well. It's also just really difficult to be an IB and Montessori school on the early start calendar in the sense that it is really difficult for our younger students to attend school in August. Younger children have a harder time like self-regulating and monitoring their own temperature and things like that. And while a high school student might be more capable of being hot and enduring it, it is really difficult for the little ones often at the beginning of the year. And it's a very negative start, in my opinion, to their school experience to be hot and be crying and be upset that they're stuck in this hot room that's 90-some degrees when they would like to be at home and be a little more comfortable. And it kind of makes our adjustment to school take longer for our students in the sense that they spend such a long time being uncomfortable at the beginning that it's hard for them to adjust. I do think that it's really important that we are able to rejoin our Montessori cohorts and be on the traditional school calendar as part of a really important community. And McDowell is a very important part of our MPS and Montessori history. And I think it's really wonderful that we get to be part of such an amazing program. Thank you.
James Nelson?
Hello, James Nelson, Nelsen. I'm here to speak against the proposed one calendar, the way it stands. When we take a look at the survey data, it's pretty clear when 59% of all survey respondents say they want some kind of early start. It was 59% want some kind of early start. That's a very, very clear majority. It was only 41% that want a traditional start. I've emailed all of you, and I sent you the presentation from Dr. Driver when this was first proposed. Let's review, I think, why the early start is so important to high schools. We've already heard one speaker talk about the importance of getting the final exams done this week and avoiding the learning loss. That's important. There's also J-term, all right? J-term funds have to be spent by June 30th. And frankly, a lot of our kids depend on J-term and to graduate. And what makes the J-term possible is the early start. Then one of the biggest issues is, of course, advanced placement. It was acknowledged in the presentation that this is going to be a problem for AP and IB exams. And the solution is to have summer programming for IB only, but not for AP. Now, I pulled the numbers from DPI from 2022, which was the most recently available, and we had 1,500 kids in the district take 2,300 AP exams in 2022. There's been no proposed solution for that other than Saturday academies, which are not well attended. And then, of course, I don't want to not speak to this item, but if we look at the bottom of the page, with all due respect to my colleagues at McDowell, it looks like they're going to be starting early anyway, as well as the other IB schools, because later on in this meeting, you are going to be asked to approve a 2-calendar option. I think the equitable thing to do is to take care of all of the needs of our high school kids. I understand I don't want little kids in the heat in summer, so just let the high schools start early. Let the younger kids have the traditional start, do a 2-calendar option, ask the administration to bring that back in January. It would be the equitable thing to do. Thank you very much.
Melissa Rickey?
Hello, my name is Melissa Rickey, R-I-C-K-E-Y. I speak to you today because I am not in favor of the single calendar option. I'm an AP English language teacher coming from Golda Meir, and I'm very proud about that. I spent the first 9 years of my career at a traditional K-8 school where I taught 8th grade in a hot classroom, and I also taught reading intervention. Now that I've worked with the youngest kids and our struggling readers, and now I'm at the top end, I've seen the whole gamut of where our students are, and I know that my students need the extra three weeks of preparation to be ready to take the AP exam. My colleagues have talked about equity when it comes to our high school students. I've seen where our kids are coming from. They're hungry, they want to learn, they want to do well. And we in high school are in a position to enable them to not just do well, but to be college ready. We make sure that all of our students that come through Golda Meir are going off in a way that they will be successful their freshman year of college. We have high expectations of our colleagues, we have high expectations of our students, and people live up to that. The trouble is, by losing those 3 weeks as an AP English language teacher, I lose 3 weeks of instruction before my exam. It does me no good to have them after the exam when my students have been pushing every day and using every single instructional minute to grow. I think we can all speak plainly and know that some of our kids come to us ill-prepared for the challenges and the rigor of high school. I spend the first 3 weeks of my school year not just beginning Unit 1, but giving all of my students opportunities to get caught up, to remediate and accelerate them. As someone with a gifted and talented license, I see a lot of potential not only in my brightest students, but in students who've also been left behind. Our kids want to do well, they want to succeed. It's up to us, especially at the high school level when these students have already had many, many years of education, to try and get them to reach whatever goals it is that they have. I need these 3 weeks in order to prepare them, in order to help them achieve their goals and be successful, and to help represent Milwaukee in the way it should be, with great, wonderful kids who come back and support our community and are great representatives of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Birkin? Sorry about that. Gloria Harper?
Hello, Gloria Harper, Harper. I am coming to speak on, as a former parent of MPS graduates, as a current MPS teacher, as a newer MPS teacher, and as a teacher of a school that is not so well performing as McDowell and as Golden Meyer. And I'm speaking against the traditional start calendar. I believe an early start calendar is the most equitable for us. And I also believe that splitting our calendar, having our high schools on an early start calendar and having our elementary schools on a traditional calendar would be more equitable in the long term, not just for busing and not just for daycare, but also for the fact that high schoolers who are in the advanced placement classes, they absolutely do need that extra time, especially in schools like mine. We do need that extra time. As far as busing, I understand the concern for transportation, but I personally believe that high schoolers can take the city bus and that they probably should take the city bus in a lot of cases. With us offering, with my school offering AP classes, how are we really going to get them prepared for AP classes if we're starting in September? Our first week of school is spent trying to get our students acclimated. And I understand that people have a disagreement about us starting in August, but August really is not that hot of a month for us to start. Yes, our schools are not air conditioned, and yes, they should be air conditioned. We do have windows, okay? The other thing that I also am hearing, I'm hearing that sped services in a lot of cases are not being presented, and it's not that they're not being offered, they're not being given. I believe that sped services can be split between the calendars, that there should be a sped services team that should be for early start and a sped services team that should be for traditional. What was the other thing, the other note that I had? And as a teacher, on my end, the fluidity of the way that our calendar is now, with it being an early start calendar, it is so much easier and it's so much more convenient. And as a teacher, and especially as a newer teacher who is now teaching a new subject, the ability and the timing that I need to prepare my next semester, this winter break, having finals right now, right before break, is the perfect timing. It gives teachers and staff an actual break. It gives us time to clear our head. It gives us time, especially newer teachers, to prepare for the next semester instead of us being frazzled trying to figure out what is what.
Thank
You know,
you.
and I would like for you guys to take that into consideration with this as well.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Owen Driscoll?
Hello, Owen Driscoll, D as in David, Riscoll. Good evening, Dr. Posley, members of the committee. I would like to give special thanks to Director Simpson, my school board rep, who is kind enough to sit down and listen to my concerns and questions. Thank you so much for providing a space where student voice is encouraged and valued. As you know, there's a proposal to unify the district calendar. I recognize the need for, and I support a unified calendar. The staff recommendation is a September 3rd start date. This date is not compatible with the requirements of the International Baccalaureate Organization. There's also a proposal to have two calendars, as we currently do. This proposal would have an IB calendar and a non-IB calendar. This proposal does not solve the current issues we face under the existing two-calendar system. IB diploma classes, which is what King is known for, come in two flavors, higher level and standard level. Higher level courses are 2-year courses intended to cover the first 2 semesters of a college level class. Standard level courses are 1-year courses that cover the first semester of a college level class. The IBO strongly recommends 240 hours of instruction for HL and 150 hours of instruction for SL. We cannot hit these numbers given a September 3rd start date. Rufus King has a special place in the IB world. In 1979, we became one of the first IB schools in America. Rufus King has provided a world-class IB education to economically disadvantaged students for generations, and we do not intend on stopping anytime soon. If we were to start September 3rd, we would not have adequate time to prepare for IB exams. This would have the most severe impact on economically disadvantaged students. A starting date of August 12th under a unified calendar is the best option for Rufus King. This date, however, is not the best option for our district. Rufus King is one of the most diverse IB schools in the world, both racially and economically. And as such, we recognize the need for compromise. We think that the August 26th start date provides the best balance between the needs of the district and the requirements of the IBO. Additionally, this date was chosen by 94% of survey respondents as either their first or second choice. We ask you to recognize this need and willingness for compromise and to support a unified calendar starting August 26th. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Driscoll, okay. So Director Simpson is not over King. I am District 3, not Director Simpson, Director Jackson. That's all.
Representative, like where I live.
Understood, but we talking about King.
All right. See, this is what I like to see, school board members kind of tugging at what school is what. Just so you know, I'm a Rufus King graduate, so I feel like I have a say in that tug and pull as well. All right, so we have Manuel Isag.
Hi, it's Manuelis Hag, I-S-H-A-G. Hello, Director Posley, members of the committee. Let me start out by saying thank you. Myself and my peers are grateful for the continuous efforts of the district to empower and integrate the student voice and opinion. I'm here to address the issue of a unified calendar and its inherent effect on the IB schools of the district. Being a student of Rufus King High School and full IB, I have great appreciation for the IB system and a great understanding of our goals and needs. Our main priority is to garner student success on the IB exams. A September start date would put us below the recommended amount of in-class instruction hours for both higher level and standard level exams. As a son of an MPS family, I quite understand the struggle of operating under many calendars. 3 years ago, I had a brother in high school and another in elementary school, while I was in middle school and my mom was a primary teacher. I understand the need for a unified schedule and I'm in full support of it. However, the IB system provides great opportunities for many underprivileged and underserved communities. What we are proposing is a solution that's already been attempted. Previously, King started independently from the rest of the district. We had an established memorandum of understanding that allowed us to determine our own start date. This allowed us to ensure that we had adequate time to take and succeed in IB testing. As a school, we see two solutions which are conducive to success. The first is to go to a unified calendar and begin on the 12th or the 26th of August. The second is an MOU between the state and the district to allow IB schools or IB and AP schools to begin independently on August 12th in order to foster student success and ensure better scores on IB and AP exams. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we have one speech that's going to be given by a couple folks. So I'm going to just read the order in which you will go. So if you want to line up by the podium in this order, we have Janine Ferris, followed by Layla Mohammed Rodriguez, followed by Christiana Thompson, followed by Simone Ferris, and last but not least, Ricky Elmore. And when you're ready, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Janine Ferris, F-A-R-E-S. I am the president of Reagan's Student Advocacy Group, along with a member of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. We will be advocating for one unified calendar to begin on August 12th. As we all know, Reagan is the only high school with a fully implemented IB program. So we, as mentioned before, we need 150 hours of instructional time for SL or standard level exams along with 240 hours of higher level exams. So we did the math. If we started any date later than the August 12th, starting August 26th, we would be losing out on 42.4 hours of the required instructional time. And starting September 3rd, we would be losing out on 45.2 hours of instructional time. IB exams begin in May, and a later start date for this will be not beneficial to the preparation for these exams. Our two courses will be significantly affected. Reagan is the only high school with this fully implemented, and although we know that two different calendars will be beneficial, it contradicts the district's entire plan to have one unified calendar. So along with the different points that will be brought up by the fellow students here at Reagan, we are advocating for an August 12th start date. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Layla Mohammed Rodriguez. Sorry, I was getting ready to spell it. Spelled MUHAMMAD hyphen RODRIGUEZ. This new proposed calendar with the September start date will greatly impact the scheduling of instructional time for IB schools, particularly Reagan, thus putting students at an educational disadvantage. These schools are minority dominant, and this would further the education gap between minority and white students. It is also unfair that it will disproportionately impact specific schools through requiring students to come in on weekends, their summers, having shortened breaks throughout the school day, which cuts into students' personal time, would require teachers to be paid more in overtime, and would push people away from full IB, which presents students with the opportunity to excel in higher education and open up career opportunities and help students to develop personal, professional, and creative and critical thinking skills. The need for extra instructional time will create the issue that will create an issue for all students in these schools, even students who are not full diploma. At Reagan, we have programs like CP, the career program, which requires students to take an IB exam, therefore putting non-full IB students at a disadvantage as well. I would also like to point out that the survey that was given to the public was not very informative of the consequences of each start date, and I feel like the need for transparency in that regard is crucial for letting people make an informed and educated decision. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christiana Thompson, THOMPSON. I want to start by saying that yes, Reagan has a program, which is the career program, which requires them to take an IB exam. Thank you. Even though they aren't full IB, they still have to take an IB exam. And without having all the time that they need to prepare, they won't be ready. And also, I know that it was brought up about the summer programs. Like they said, not all the programs have good enough numbers for people who actually go to these programs. Not to mention the teachers that have to get paid to teach at those summer programs. With less time, it takes grading assignments away. The teacher's time for grading and preparing for these assignments and exams are going to be taken away. We would like to have the August 14th start date to help make sure that we are prepared for the exams May 1st. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Simone Ferris, Farris. So I know it's been mentioned that having a later start time would also mean having Saturday school and summer school opportunities for kids that need the extra instructional time in order to take SL and HL IB exams. But I feel like we're overlooking the fact that this takes a lot of free time that is extremely necessary for students to have in order to prevent burnout and to ease the stress and depression that's caused from spending so much time on schoolwork and in the school environment already. I know that personally this is something I've always struggled with, and I pick my courses in January after coming back from break. And I already was, I couldn't decide if I wanted to go full IB because of the time and stress it takes. But I know that if we move the schedule back, I definitely would not do it because I know that because of the struggles it would cause me, I would not be successful doing that program. And a lot of my friends from every grade level have expressed similar thoughts to me. This would also affect mental problems for teachers as well because it's taking time out of their day from seeing their families or just from taking a break from kids at school because they'd have to come in during Saturdays and for summer school, and it is not beneficial for anyone in those terms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ricky Elmore, E-L-M-O-R-E. I am a student athlete at Reagan and also a member of the advisory board at Reagan. And one of the main things I'll be talking about is how the WIA scheduling, it doesn't change for us students that would be stuck with the September calendar. Students already have that problem with transportation to practices for football specifically because we start in July. And school already starts in August, and that's a month difference for the practices already. So moving this back to September, we would then be allowing a bigger gap for transportation issues. And me personally, I know I had transportation issues this prior season, so that would greatly affect and maybe even deter players from being able to come out and play football. Additionally, I'd talk about how the SL and HL student courses, you guys offer the summer programs. This would also deter students away from becoming athletes because the courses that you would be taking, you would have to take these summer programs and then you wouldn't be able to play a sport because of that. Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any virtual testimony?
Madam Chair, we did have one person register to speak virtually. We'll switch our platform over. That speaker is Lucas Weir. If you could please state your name, spell your last name, and give your testimony.
Lucas Weir, W-I-E-R-E-R. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please begin your testimony.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Posley, Director Garcia, and members of the board. I'm not speaking tonight like some to offer certainty, but rather to further add to the murkiness, as a reminder that these calendars should not be rushed, nor should we be making decisions that now impact teachers, families, and students in less than a year. In the future, please start this conversation earlier. I want to start by addressing a couple comments that have already come up in favor of all high schools remaining on the early start. At least a few people will argue that the single calendar is not fair to certain high schoolers because it takes away from days to prepare for the AP exam or the IB exams. While this is true, less than 10% of high school students take AP exams. So we should not be making decisions that impact all high schools based on a small minority of students. Another argument is that high school early start allows for J-term. No doubt J-term has contributed in some part to higher graduation rates. But to credit all the graduation gains to the high school early start calendar is being ignorant at best and dishonest at worst. During this time, we saw graduation rates increase. Teachers were increasingly pressured by administration to pass more students by creating failure reduction plans. And at least a handful of high schools moved to block scheduling, which allowed students to earn an additional credit each year, 32 over 4 years instead of just 28. If the teachers arguing the merits of J-term have not also pushed for block scheduling to improve graduation rates, I think it's fair to question their motives about the credit situation of our children. And finally, I doubt there's any data on this, but at least some high school students miss the first 3 weeks of school on the early start calendar because they're home with younger siblings. This does not impact our official attendance because they are listed as no-showed, but those are weeks the students cannot get back. If we are to believe AP students perform more poorly on tests because they have 3 less weeks to prepare, is it also safe to say that students who miss the first 3 weeks of school may struggle to get caught up, and in some cases may fail courses because of their delayed start? I don't know what the correct schedule decision is. You guys have a really tough decision to make. But if our IB schools are going to have their own calendar to meet their needs, shouldn't we consider the individual needs of all of our schools when we make this decision? Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the testimony for this item?
That concludes the virtual testimony for this item.
All right, thank you. All right, do any committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I agree. This is one of those topics that you're not going to make everyone happy with. It's a very complex issue, and everyone tonight has raised really excellent points. I want to thank the folks on the calendar committee. I know that's a really heavy lift to do that work and bring forward this recommendation, and also thank the students. I did agree with the Reagan student about the August 26th. I mean, that was my initial, a compromise to get everyone to one calendar. But can administration just speak to, is it possible to get a waiver for that last week in August for all schools to move to that date?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Zambor, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Under state statute, there is a requirement that schools start no sooner than September 1. There are some caveats and opportunities for a waiver, and people have mentioned and identified there is a specific waiver available for IB schools. Under the DPI administrative rules, there is an opportunity, an exception for schools to start prior to September 1 if there are, let's say, a year-round school. That's an exception. There is also an exception that is provided for special programming, meaning if there's special programming implemented by a district related to gifted and talented, any remedial coursework, anything coursework that's acceptable. That is the provision in which we currently are on the early start calendar for all our high schools. We reference the J term and other opportunities, and that's the reason why we have part of our schools of our district starting prior to September 1. Even though the state statute says that you can't start before September 1. In that exception, there is a statement that indicates that no school district can officially start all of their schools prior to September 1. So while there is that exception for specialty programming, you have to somehow stretch it out and say that the specialty programming would apply to all schools within the district. That said, there's a statement in that exemption that says that it cannot apply to entire district.
Any follow-up? Director Jackson.
Well, first off, I want to thank all the presenters. Thank you, students, the teachers, and also to hear a parent's perspective who's now a teacher as well. I can honestly say before I came into this position, I knew nothing about the extent of the importance of a single calendar, 2-calendar school year. But just hearing now the perspective, the opinions of others, I can see how this is a tough decision to make. Because, as you said before, Director Zambor, no one side will be satisfied. Somebody's going to be, disappointed, however it is. I think I really didn't think, in taking into account the consequences, as one of the youth said, as far as the stress, the learning loss especially, but just the lack of attendance and just discouraging. And it's not taking the point of just being an IB, but just in any high school or school in general, just being discouraged, not having that time. And my biggest thing outside of just being in one of the decision makers here, I don't want to make a decision that will gravely impact your future by a loss of this type of magnitude. So for me, I'm just taking so much in right now. Man, I really didn't know, and now I do, and there's a lot that I have to consider. So I appreciate that, and also, Mr. Nelson, I did appreciate your email as well. Thank you for that insight. I'm still learning more about this too, so I appreciate that. But this decision right now, I would, in my opinion, I think we would do a injustice to really to say yeah and nay right now. There's a lot to consider. It really is. And I have 2 children who went to King and graduated, and I understood the pressure of IB because they both were in IB classes. I took on that pressure as well as a parent, so that affected my household as well, gravely. My son went to McDowell growing up, so I understand. I get it. I really do. So I definitely understand, and I want to make the best decision that impacts you and the best part of your future moving forward. Because after you leave, there's others. So please, I would say, if nothing else, keep advocating after you leave for those that you're leaving behind. Yeah, thank you for that information. I will say I needed that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? President Herndon.
Thank you very much. The August 12th date and the traditional start date, there's that several week spread in between, but you also offered I think it's August 26th. It sounds like August 26th would reduce the time loss for our IB students, and I wonder if someone could speak on that. The students spoke quite well on the negative impact of the traditional start date, and I understand that, but we have to make this difficult decision, so I'm wondering if we could perhaps meet in the middle. What would be the pros and the cons of the August 26th date?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Adrian Madeleine, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, August 26th start date, that was introduced as a potential compromise. I think a few things to keep in mind with moving to the August 26th start date. I think there would still be the issues related to the IB hours, that it'll just be less. So I acknowledge that there will be less that would have to be made up, that there still be some accommodations that would have to be made. There is, the DPI concern that has to be taken into consideration going for the August 26th start date. Still August, late August, there's potential excessive heat days that you'll be experiencing at that point. So I think that those are all opportunities and considerations that have to be made. Transportation, I think there still might be that impact with drivers potentially. I would say Mr. Pfeiffer could speak more to that, but off the top of my head, I think those things would have to be taken into consideration when moving forward with August 26th start time.
Any follow-up, President Herndon?
Yes, I'd like to hear what Mr. Pfeiffer has to say about transportation.
All right, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Director Herndon, Chair Garcia, members of the committee, David Pfeiffer, Director of Business and Transportation Services. Obviously, I'll just start with the easier part. Like from a fiscal standpoint, it dramatically reduces the cost of the 2-calendar expenditure line. So I think if you're looking at numbers, I would anticipate between $100,000 and $200,000 to do an early start, depending upon if you're talking about IB schools relative to all high schools. And so that number fluctuates based on the number of schools that you would have operating on an earlier start calendar. But if you're looking, about 24% of the school bus routes are IB school bus routes. So doing the math there, if you were doing 5 days or 7 days as opposed to 28 days, that financial impact dramatically lessens from that standpoint. And you would see a pretty good savings just by doing something of that nature. From a driver standpoint, obviously, again, we've functioned for the last umpteen years with the current model, so we're going to make it happen one way or the other. We do experience those scenarios where drivers have childcare related issues. That would continue to happen over a shorter duration of period, but every shorter duration from our standpoint is advantageous for us. Again, from a planning standpoint, it does offer us more opportunities to refine our planning of schedules. So just to give a little bit of frame of reference without getting too in depth, we a lot of times don't get information from families over the summertime, so we do need as much of those touch point opportunities to plan and reach our audience. And so when you do take away 28 days when you're doing regular school year transportation, it does have an impact on our planning ability. So moving back to an August start date, later August, does really help us dramatically in that regard. But we're going to make it work one way or the other. So I obviously want to make that point. It does become easier with less days on 2 calendars. So that's, I think, the takeaway that I'd like to put out there. And then financially, it's much more advantageous for us to have the least amount of days on 2 calendars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to pass the gavel to Director Jackson. All right. I just wanted administration just to, from a, like framing it from the limitations that we have to be bound by because of DPA state statute. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that, you know, it's not as easy for us to necessarily move the needle on when we think it should happen, but we're like legally bound by some limitations. I know that was one of the questions that I had in terms of like the feasibility for us to actually like play around with like whatever day in August that we're looking at, because DPI is really putting I want to say like red tape around what that decision can really realistically look like. Can someone from the administration just kind of expand on that?
Chair Jackson, Director Garcia, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, to explain a little bit further, conversations with DPI have centered around what would it look like for the district to go to a single calendar. They have basically referenced their administrative rules that indicate, yes, there is an exception for specialty programming. We would have to make the argument and feel comfortable that that fits in that framework, but that's a big but there. There's a line in that administrative rule that indicates that an entire school district can't start before September 1, even though there's a specialty program. So that would be risk that we're looking at when it comes to moving forward something before September 1, when the administrative rule is pretty clear on that.
And a follow-up for that, like what would be the type of consequences? Let's say that, you know, yes, September 1st, like the whole district can't, but let's say we move that we want, for example, the August 26th start date. Do we know what those consequences would be for us?
Chair Jackson, Director Garcia, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. The DPI has not been specific or direct on what that consequence could be. They said if a complaint was raised, an issue, they would have to investigate and look at it and then take it from there at that point. So could it be anything from them saying, okay, you got to move back at once? I guess that's on the table, or they could say it could at a later time move back. I think there isn't anything that specifically outlines what the parameters of what that consequence would be. So that would be something that DPI would have to work with us on.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. I'll take the gavel back. Thank you. All right, directors on board.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. So this is not the first time I've been in this room with the same conversation, some of the same people in the audience, and this keeps coming back before the board because I think there is a very serious need to get on one calendar, both operationally and for our families to be on one calendar. It's something families really desire, and I think we're going to keep coming back to this if we don't find a way to get on one calendar. It's really unfortunate that we don't have the local control that we need to be able to make that date be the best date for our programming. I think, you know, I appreciate the administration's recommendation. I think in the meantime, regardless of what happens, you know, we as a board should, you know, consider ways that we can lobby the state to allow. I know there's been a bill circulating before for letting school districts start before that September start date. I know the tourism lobby is very strong, and that's one of the reasons that exists. So I just want to acknowledge, like, I know this isn't a perfect solution, but I think it's incredibly important that we finally get on one calendar, because this is going to keep coming up, but that we also can't let off the gas, and we have to continue to do the work to try to get the perfect date for everyone.
Yes. Is there any other comments? Questions? All right, then what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Zambor.
I move approval of the administration's recommendation to, make sure I get this right, implement the 24-25 district-wide school calendar as attached.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zombor's motion to approve the administration's recommendation to implement the 2024-2025 district-wide school calendar as presented in this item. Director Herndon.
This is extremely difficult. Madam Secretary, could I make an alternate?
The vote hasn't been started, so you could move a substitute.
Okay. I'd like to make a substitute motion to move this item to full board.
All right.
To clarify, is that to advance it to the board without a recommendation?
Without a recommendation.
The Madam Chair, the motion on the floor is Director Herndon's motion to move the item to the board, to the full board without a recommendation. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
No.
Chair Garcia.
No.
The motion fails on a tie vote. So we are back to Director Zombor's motion, which is to approve the administration's recommendation to implement the 2024-25 district-wide school calendar as presented in the attachments to this item. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
No.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 4, action on recommendations for implementation of time off for mental health in follow-up to Resolution 2324R-001. The administration recommends that the board approve one of the implementation items attached to this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, in July of 2023, Resolution 2324R-001 was introduced and approved at the August 2023 board meeting. The resolution requires administration to bring back 2 recommendations for board review regarding time off for mental health options. This evening, I have with me Adrian Matalini, Chief of Human Resources, to present this recommendation, and after which we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you have. Adrian.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Adrian Matalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. As Dr. Posley mentioned, during the August board cycle, the board adopted Resolution 2324-001 for time off for mental health. The resolution provides for paid time off not to exceed 5 days for 12-month staff. The resolution also directed administration to return no later than December with 2 implementation options for the school board to consider. I'll briefly walk through the options we are presenting tonight. Option 1 centers on offering 12-month non-school-based staff the ability to take up to 5 consecutive days off from work for mental wellness during the month of July. Option 2 centers on offering 12-month non-school-based staff the ability to take up to 5 workdays off during the month of July for mental wellness. The eligible days off would be restricted to Mondays and Fridays during the month of July. This offers staff the ability to have long weekends during the month of July. It is important to note that under either option, eligible staff must request the time off in advance. Based upon the needs of the department, an eligible staff member might not have the exact requested days off approved, but they would have the time off during the month of July. When we developed these options, it was important to administration that we be able to ensure that operations are not negatively impacted during the month of July, as we understand how important it is right before the school year to have things moving forward, especially in my area of human resources. When it comes to staffing, July is a very busy month for us. So we wanted to make sure that we can balance the need for our staff to have a time off, but also ensure that we continue to meet the needs and have our schools fully staffed as we approach the start of the school year. The time off for mental wellness must be taken during the month of July and cannot be carried over to subsequent years. The time off cannot be accumulated or paid out at any time, including but not limited to resignation, retirement, or a vacation payout. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Would you allow me to read a brief statement from Director Gokul Gandhi, who couldn't be here tonight, just about the, okay, thank you. So this is from Director Gokul Gandhi. This resolution is a reflection of the fact that we should be encouraging people to take dedicated time off for a year worth of effort. After some qualitative questioning, it became evident to me that central office staff is not taking time to rest and relax during the summer, and so this resolution is an attempt to provide them with some extra time to find reprieve after a year's worth of hard work.
Thank you, Director Zambor, and the spirit of Director Gokul Gandhi's words. Do any other committee members have any questions or comments? Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. To be sure, while it is heavily implied, it's not explicit in the document, this will be paid time off rather than just an unpaid but excused absence. Is that correct?
Administration.
Director Garcia, Mr. Chasen, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I don't want my comments or questions to be received as casting shade on the proposal or dismissive of the need for adequate attention paid to mental health and wellness. But I do want to, for transparency's sake, note that this is essentially then, I think, really floating 5 paid holidays that are then afforded to 12-month staff, and that would be on top of the 12 paid floating holidays we have now for a total of 17. Additionally, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that while this is a proposal that is specific to 12-month staff, I'm wondering if the administration has any future plans or ideas on the mental wellness of the staff in classrooms, the 10-month staff. Obviously, this is directed to 12-month. Is there anything currently on the docket similarly for 10-month?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Mr. Chason, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Well, it's absolutely true that the mental health and wellness of all our staff, including our 10-month staff, is important. While this resolution focuses on the 12-month central office staff, because our 10-month staff do have summers off, we have the struggle of we have absenteeism issues in our classrooms with staff. So offering time off in the middle of the school year, the work year for classroom-based staff would have a negative impact on the classroom. As I brought issues and brought a substitute teacher incentive item last month for everyone to consider, is because we are not filling the absences in our classrooms at this point, and we need to improve that. So we are definitely open and want to consider how we can improve and support the mental wellness of our staff in the classrooms in our schools. I think it'll just have to look different in other ways, and we definitely would continue to look at that and definitely want to take that into consideration, and we'll accept suggestions in that regard.
Any follow-up? Good. All right. Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Is this kind of like a use it or lose it scenario? Can you just address like what would happen if someone didn't? Is it mandatory? And then also, are employees still allowed to buy back like any unused time? Or can you just address what that would look like?
Administration?
Sure. Chair Garcia, Directors on board, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, you would say it's a use it or lose it. This is separate and apart from vacation or sick leave, because we know that vacation is tied to potential payouts. We are still continuing to offer the payout. This resolution, as passed in August, allowed the district to continue with the vacation payout option. We don't want to have a situation where we can carry over, and we want individuals to use it. So that's why we're saying you got to use it in the month of July, and it's not going to carry over. It is not mandatory, but we won't force everyone, but we're highly encouraging people to take it, and requests will be granted to provide the time off within that month, as long as it meets operational needs for the department.
Any follow-up?
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Do you have any? Is this something that the ASC is also advocating for? Do you know what their thoughts are on it? I haven't gotten any communication from anyone like for or against it, so I'm trying to gauge where people are at with this, and is this something that does this hit the mark?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Directors on board, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I will say that there's an appreciation from ASC to recognize the hard work and effort that central office staff do put in during a 12-month period. Central office staff don't always get recognized, and rightfully so. We're supportive of the schools, and the schools are the priority. The classroom is the priority. But a lot of the work that is done is important, and we are experiencing shortages, just like the classrooms with staff. I could tell you there clearly is challenges when it comes to recruitment and retention of a lot of the central office staff, in the sense that a number of the positions are operational in nature, and so you're kind of competing with private sector as well as public sector employers for these positions. It could be an accountant, it could be an HR specialist, any of those positions. You're competing with private sector. So for morale purposes, okay, sorry. That it does hit the mark. I will say in addressing that and helping retain the staff that we have as central office. But officially, ASC has not given me a formal blessing to this, but they have not raised this as an issue, as a concern either.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, and my conversations with Steve Lubar from ASC, and this has been shared with him, and I saw excitement as far as this opportunity, but you know, and so that's only have been just shared with him.
Director Zambor. Thank you, Chair Garcia. Okay, last one. Does the administration have a preference between option 1 and option 2?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Zambor, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. We can make either one happen. I think our preference, and I think operationally, option 2 would be our preference in the sense that having long weekends, I think staff would appreciate the long weekends, and we can continue and maintain work easier if it's in 2-day chunks that people are absent. So that would be our preference. And I know when you look at some other like school districts, neighboring school districts, their district staff may even just have like Friday off during the summer, those type of things. So that'll be something in alignment to that.
Follow up? All right. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we had no speaker request for this item.
Excellent. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item?
If I may just sort of follow,
one more.
I want to
Go
thank
ahead.
Matt Chasen for the 10-month. I didn't know that wasn't a part of this, so I appreciate that, that input as well. So this is not for teachers or paraprofessionals of this mental health.
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Jackson, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer, that is correct.
Follow up, Director Jackson?
No.
No? Okay. Any other comments or questions? President Herndon?
What is the plan as it would impact teachers? Do you have a plan for the teachers that work throughout the school year?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Our plan would be to continue to investigate ways we can support and improve mental wellness for our 10-month school-based staff. As I mentioned, there's a bit of challenge because offering time off for those individuals impacts our ability to staff the classrooms, and we have the absenteeism issue and our sub-teacher fill rate as a problem. With our substitute teacher incentive that has been just introduced and will be effective starting January 1, we may see those fill rates improve, and if they do, then I think we could definitely then look at incentive days and some other options to support teachers in our classroom-based staff.
Thank you. Follow up, President Herndon? Good. All right. Any other?
No, I mean, to that, burnout is an issue too, so whether you acknowledge it or not, an adult dealing with any issue related to school matters or personal will still take off. Well, so we will still have the issue of not having enough staff, regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rough one. All right, so then what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Anyone? President Herndon.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of administration on this item as it related to mental health.
Do we have to specify which option?
I was going to say, I believe the administration is asking for the board to determine which option it wishes, if any.
Option 1 or 2?
I would say recommendation on option 2.
Right. Does the secretary have that in the motion?
The motion by Director Herndon would be to approve option 2 as presented in the attachment to this item.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
Okay, that was Director Herndon's motion to approve option 2 as presented in the attachments to this item. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
And Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 5, action on a request for approval of a job description for a planning assistant to agriculture. The administration recommends that the board approve the attached job description for the planning assistant to agriculture position.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we are requesting your approval of the job description before you for an agriculture position at Vincent High School. Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, is here with me this evening to share out with the information regarding this description. Adrian?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. During the October budget adjustments, this board approved a agriculture position related to Vincent High School. And based upon that, we're coming forward with a job description for approval so that we can move forward with advertising, posting, and hopefully hiring that position soon. I want to point out that this job description was shared with the Vincent staff and community and got their feedback. And we feel that this job description adequately defines and identifies the work that would be done for this position as envisioned by the team in Vincent. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Excuse me. Give me 1 second. Oh, all right. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
We had no speaker request for this item, Madam Chair.
Excellent. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item?
I move that we accept the approval of the job description for the planning assistant of agriculture at Vincent High School.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the recommended job description for the planning assistant to agriculture, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 6, action on a request to reallocate $75,000 in funding to the recruitment of staff at historically black colleges and universities. The administration recommends that the board approve the reallocation of funds in the amount of $75,000 to the Office of School Administration for the continued recruitment of staff at historically black colleges and universities.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, on October's board meeting, the administration was directed to reallocate funds in the amount of $75,000 from a fund slated to recruit staff at historical black colleges and universities. This evening, the administration is recommending that the funding be reallocated to another budget that would allow the continuation of recruitment of staff from historical black colleges and university. I have Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, that will go through this item, and after which we will answer any questions that you have. Adrian.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Adrian Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer. As Dr. Posey indicated, in October, we requested to reallocate the $75,000 in order to keep with the spirit of what that money was set aside for. We would like to have it reallocated to the Office of School Administration to further expand and strengthen our recruitment efforts with regards to historically black colleges and universities. This will be a collaborative effort between school administration and human resources. We have currently do engage in some recruitment activities with historically black colleges and universities. This funding will allow us to really strengthen that by allowing us to touch more colleges and universities. We'll be able to identify our internal staff that are alum that could help on the recruitment initiatives and build those relationships with those colleges and universities as they can speak to the students, and they may have their own connections with the colleges and universities to get our foot in the door, because we know it can be a challenge when you're recruiting for Milwaukee Public Schools. So we will want to be able to have that connection where we have administrators, teachers that can say, hey, I made the jump. I went to your college. I came to Milwaukee. It's great. You can be successful. And in addition to recruiting teachers, this additional funds will allow us to expand, because to go beyond the School of Education and working with the deans of the HBCUs to see how can we get in and meet with the School of Business, right? Look at the other areas where we do have hard time filling. Engineers, architects, anything that are outside the classroom, we can really build those relationships to see in those areas if we can recruit those highly talented staff and students to come up here and become part of our staff. So that is our plan, and we really are excited about this opportunity to really build the relationships with these colleges and universities and have multiple touch points through the years with them and build relationships with the students so they can get familiar with us and hopefully diversify our workforce in the classroom and outside. And with that, we can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. So last Friday, I had an opportunity to meet with the Lit students for school board member trivia. And as I was talking to the students, one of the things that I asked, they asked if I had questions for them. And I said, what is one thing you would change about your school if you could? And they said that they want more teachers that look like them. And so I just appreciate the administration's work on this. I have confidence that this is a wiser way to allocate the money. I do have a couple questions. So are we transferring the money to the Office of School Administration or Human Resources, just to be clear, or is it a little bit of both? And then also, when would be a good month, like how long would it take to kind of see the results of this, where we could just get an update on just our overall HBCU recruitment efforts?
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, these dollars will be between the two departments, between HR as well as school administration, and I would say probably April, May, because that is when the recruitment cycle, that's graduation for a lot of those institutions, and we will have outcome numbers of how many individuals, because they are planning trips and those kinds of things would have to work to get into those institutions. So and my recommendation would be May.
Any follow-up?
Thank you.
All right. Any other committee members have comments, questions? No. All right. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
We do have, you have some speaker slips with you, and we do have one virtual speaker registered as well.
All right. Let's start off with the person here, Sheila Tompkins Dot. Here? All right. Then let's go with the person on the virtual platform.
On the virtual platform, we have Beverly Williams. If you could please state your name, spell your last name, and then begin your testimony.
Beverly Williams, Williams. Our group, Community Takeover Voices for Milwaukee's Children, have serious concerns about the accountability of this $75,000. This money is now available because MPS ended its contract with Representative Republican Vice Chair Gerard Randall and Milwaukee Education Partnership on 11/16/23 after giving away $1.3 million over 10 years without oversight. We demand an investigation or even a resolution to investigate that $1.3 million before dispersing this $75,000 to what may become an unmonitored slush fund for MPS administration. MPS has spent thousands and thousands of dollars recruiting teachers across the U.S. and the world, even after underfunding segregated Northside schools by $73 million for teaching staff in the $1.5 billion budget for 23-24. There are other needs at MPS that can be addressed with these funds, such as improving the truancy office, who cannot find 1,000 missing MPS students, or schools that do not have adequate refrigeration for student lunches and have to send their food to other schools. It is time to investigate the $1.3 million given to Gerard Randall of Milwaukee Education Partnership, the $500,000 in transportation stipends that parents never receive, and the $110 million missing in the 2021 budget. To continue to say we're going to take another batch of money and put it into recruitment that Superintendent Posley told our group was continuously happening at HBCUs is a waste of funds. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other comments or questions? All right, what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Directors on board.
I move approval of the administration's recommendation to reallocate the funds to the Office of School Administration and Human Resources.
Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zombor's motion to approve the reallocation of $75,000 to the Offices of School Administration and Human Resources, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 7, action on monthly facilities matters, FMS award of construction, professional services contracts, and material purchase recommendation, and report with possible action regarding air quality. The administration recommends that the board approve the attached construction contracts, professional services contract, material purchase, and receive the air quality report.
Thank you. Would administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we are asking your approval in monthly finance matters, facilities matters that's related to the professional services contracts, related to exception to bid purchases. I have Sean Kane, Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services, who will provide us with a presentation, and after which we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Sean?
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Chair Garcia, members of the committee. Sean Kane, Senior Director of Facilities Maintenance Services. I'm going to give an update with the air quality report. As mentioned in the previous report, DFMS continues to work with our 4 current integrated project delivery contractors, IPDs, teams for short, that were approved in July of 2021. Our DFMS team has been working with our contracted owner's representative, Concord Group, and I asked them to provide me a summary of activities through November of 2023. After IPD contractors identified project goals and critical objectives during the later part of 2021, scopes related to air quality were defined. Contracts were issued and based on IPD cost estimates within their school assignments. The IPDs, the owner's representative, and DFMS has been meeting weekly to discuss budget, schedule, and address any outstanding concerns. The IPD teams finished the design and construction documents to solicit formal and competitive bids for ESSER II projects from their subcontractors, conforming to the requirements of Board Policy 3.09. Our team finalized ESSER II project budgets after receiving all related testing and balancing, essentially a ventilation audit, water bottle stations, flooring, outdoor classrooms, bug screens, and mechanical projects. We've been utilizing project contingency to address cost overruns with the unpredictable market or additional deferred maintenance projects moving forward. Unfortunately, we've still seen construction costs run up to 15 to 20% over where costs were before the pandemic. We had to balance funds of what's scope related to capital improvements can be done with ESSER II funds, and some improvements may need to be absorbed into ESSER III funds. Recently, I read an article from the American School and University magazine, and the topic was Cleaner Air by Mike Kennedy. He stated that prior to the pandemic, the Government Accountability Office reported in 2020 that it was estimated indoor air quality for 36,000 of the nation's 100,000 public schools were likely to need HVAC system upgrades or replacement. IPD contractors have been working on mechanical projects, bug screens, new flooring installations, outdoor classrooms, and water bottle stations that address air quality. For the general public, I want to assure you that many great improvements happen across the district to address air quality in every MPS building. All air quality scopes related to ESSER II are completed and have some minor punch list items. Efforts to get testing and balancing on mechanical projects has wrapped up. All 530 new water bottle stations have been installed. Flooring projects have been completed, which includes 1.5 million square feet of material. For outdoor classrooms, all have been completed with the exception of some minor punch list items. Scheduled bug screen projects have been completed. As mentioned, the ESSER II program has finished up, and there was an extremely heavy lift for many. I want to thank our owner's representative, Concord Group, for being a part of the department's extended work family. I want to thank the 4 IPD contractors, Nicholas & Associates, PSI, VJS/JCP, and Seltzer Orange for their commitment in getting these projects completed. But lastly, I also want to thank our DFMS team that consists of design and construction, environmental group, maintenance and repair, and building operations. A lot of hours and efforts were put in, and as we all know, the work is not done, but we are moving on to the next round of ESSER III to get those projects done. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I have a couple questions on the fire sprinkler and sand pipe testing contract, and then also the, okay, well, let's just start with that one. It says various MPS sites, like roughly, do we know how many sites? Are we gonna, is that listed anywhere? I'm sorry if I'm missing it. I just want to make sure like various isn't 2, that this is like how many sites, or do we know which ones?
Administration.
Chair Garcia, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. So this professional service contract is pretty similar to how we do like fire alarm testing, wherever sites that have these type of systems. It's not every single site, but it's a blanket contract that, you know, is part of mandates and compliance issues that for safety reasons that we perform these types of testing services.
Follow-up?
Is there a way to write the contract so that we're paying by site instead of just the blanket amount of, you know, $137,000? Or can you just show us maybe like if we've had a similar contract, how many schools we've serviced through a contract like this before?
Administration.
Chair Garcia, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. As part of the RFP, we can get that information to you. We do list the sites. It's general of any of these type of RFPs. If we know a specific site has that type of system that needs testing, we could follow up with that.
Director Zomber.
And so it was this contract, and then there was another one that was various sites. I think it's the. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's just that one. Okay, that's it for now.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments or ask
We have
questions?
no speaker request for this item, Madam Chair.
All right. Then what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item?
Yep.
Director Jackson?
Yep. I make a motion that we accept the action monthly facility matters of the construction professional service contracts and material purchase recommendation.
Will the secretary please take the roll?
I'm sorry, on Director Jackson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the awards of construction, professional services contracts, material purchases, and receipt of the air quality report. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 8, action on a request to approve conservation easements between Milwaukee Public Schools, the City of Milwaukee, and Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. The administration recommends that the board approve the limited-term conservation easements between Milwaukee Public Schools and the City of Milwaukee in favor of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District.
Would administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this evening I have with me Mr. Sean Kane, Senior Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services, to support and share out on this item as it pertains to a conservation easement between MPS, the City of Milwaukee, and MMSD. If there is any questions on this item, we're prepared to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
We have no request to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? President Herndon?
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the administration's recommendation to approve conservation easements between Milwaukee's public schools, the city, and the Metropolitan Sewer District.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the secretary please take the roll?
On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the conservation easement, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 9, action on monthly finance matters, authorization to make purchases, report on change orders in excess of $25,000, acceptance of the report on revenues and expenses, monthly expenditure control report, report on budget transfers, report on contracts under $50,000 and cumulative total report, and acceptance of donations. The administration recommends that the board, 1, authorize the purchases, and 2, accept the donations as listed in the attachments with appropriate acknowledgement to be made on behalf of the board.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the monthly finance matters before you. Janina Dumchek, Director of Procurement and Risk Management, is here with me this evening, and together we can answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
We have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Jackson.
I move that we accept the authorization to make purchase as well as the accepting of the donations as well.
Is there any further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On On Director Jackson's motion to approve the recommended purchases and accept the listed donations. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 10, action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The administration recommends that the board authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we are asking for your approval in this month's exception to bid contracts. Janina Dumchek, Director of Procurement and Risk Management Services, is here with me this evening, and we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
We have no request to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item?
I make an action that we accept the award of bid contracts.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the administration's recommendations relative to the exception to bid contracts. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 11, action on the award of professional services contracts. The administration recommends that the board authorize the professional services contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval of the professional services contracts before you. Janina Dumchek, Director of Risk Management, Procurement and Risk Management, is here with me this evening, and we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Do you have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
We have no request to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Jackson?
Yes. I make a motion that we accept the action on the award of professional service contracts.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the administration's recommendations relative to the professional services contracts. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 12, action on a request to waive administrative policy 3.09, parent 9, parent E, and issue a contract with Gabriel Rader Smith and Company for actuarial services. The administration recommends that the board authorize the waiver of administrative policy 3.09, parent 9, parent E, and issue a contract as set forth in the attachments to this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, we are asking for your approval of this item as it relates to agreements. Janina Dumchek is here with me. Between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or have any questions?
Yeah.
Director Jackson.
Yeah. So what benefits are they talking about? in particular?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Jackson, members of the committee, Janina Domchik, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. These are actuarial consulting services and contribution projections for the district's other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB, and supplemental pension plans, including valuation reports to comply with governmental accounting standard board statements.
Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability Efficiency. I'll just expand on what Ms. Adamczyk said. There were two previously in existence pension plans within the district, one for teachers and one for administrators. Both of those plans have closed, but we are obligated in our financial reports to capture what the exposure to that expense is going forward, and the actuary helps with that. In reference to the other post-employment benefits, years ago the district offered a retiree health benefit, and it was essentially the district obligating itself to paying for health benefits for retirees upon separation from the district. As those retirees continue to receive that benefit, we, again, are obligated to report that exposure, that liability on our financials, and those are the health benefits that are spoken about in this item.
Any follow-up, Mr. Director Jackson?
No, just needed clarity.
Perfect. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make any comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? President Herndon?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of administration as it relates to the actuarial services that they provide.
Was there any further discussion?
No.
All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next item, please.
The next item is item 13, action on a request to approve vacation compensation for eligible employees. The administration recommends that the board approve the vacation compensation for eligible employees as outlined in this item.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, in August of 2023, the board approved the resolution 2324R-001 to continue the practice of vacation compensation. As such, the administration is asking your approval to support vacation compensation for eligible employees. Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, is here with me this evening, and we're happy to provide any additional information regarding this item or to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Zombor.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Is this the same central office group of employees that we referred to in the last item?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The vacation payout is for any 12-month employee that earns vacation time.
Any follow-up?
No, thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments? Is there any members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Jackson.
Yes, I make a motion to, we accept the request to approve vacation compensation for eligible employees.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to vacation compensation for eligible employees, Director Herndon.
Excuse me. Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next item, please.
The next item is item 14, action on a request to appoint a trustee for post-employment benefits. The administration recommends that the board appoint Midwest Institutional Trust Company as the successor trustee for the Post-Employment Benefits Trust, pension and retiree health benefits.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this evening, the administration is requesting your approval to appoint a trustee for the post-employment benefits. Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, is here with me this evening to share details on this request. Following, we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Martha?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Currently, BMO Harris is a trustee for the post-employment benefit trusts, which include the retiree health benefits and the MPS supplemental pensions, one for teachers and one for administrators. BMO helps with managing the ins and outs of the funding as a pension plan is paid to participants or as we contribute funds to the trust. BMO is resigning as a trustee on December 29, 2023, and has appointed Midwest Institutional Trust Company as a successor trustee. The administration is recommending that the board approve using the successor trustee so that we have a smooth transition with the trust. In the meantime, MPS is putting out an RFP for custodian trustee. It will be released any day, in order to award a trustee, which will be brought to the board for approval.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions?
Just a
Director
question.
Jackson.
Yeah. So the stakeholders in this particular trust are NPS employees?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, the trust is set up for retirees, employees of MPS that retired, that are eligible
Any
for
follow-up?
benefits.
No.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, we have no request to speak on this item.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item? Director Zambor.
I move approval of the administration's recommendation to appoint the Midwest Institutional Trust Company as the successor trustee.
Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zombor's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the trustee for post-employment benefits, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Next item, please.
The next item is item 15, a report with possible action on prior year audit findings. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the administration please present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, this evening I have with me Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, to share our prior year audit findings. Following the sharing of this information, we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have with this item. Martha?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. I am here with staff from Protiviti, Shelley Caladanthio and Charles Dong, our consultants that have been helping us with our prior year audit findings and strategic improvement processes. As we set up our PowerPoint tonight, we'll start with our 5 priorities. Our strategic improvement centers around strengthening communication and collaboration, developing our staff, improving the culture, and ensuring fiscal responsibility and transparency. Our strategic plan, we are ensuring that MPS is strong financially, and that's the underpinning of our strategic plan. Have you ever been faced with a challenge and didn't know what direction to go? The challenge seemed impossible. That is what finance was faced with, as we had essential position vacancies, including the comptroller, the reporting manager that works right under the comptroller, the grant accounting coordinator, the budget director, manager, and coordinator. This is where we found ourselves last year. We had an audit to finish, an annual report with financial statements that needed to be developed, and a budget to plan right around the corner. This story is not unusual for other major school districts in the nation. The point isn't the circumstances we found ourselves in, but how we responded. I knew that adversity has a way of motivating to move beyond complacency. We were going to use this moment to become better than before. You've heard the term, build back better. We started by inviting a partner to come alongside us. Robert Half could help us with staffing. They had the expertise to identify experienced financial staff. The next thing we noticed was that staff that had left walked out with much knowledge that was not necessarily documented in a complete way. We needed to update our standard operating procedures. There were clear gaps in what we thought was good. Robert Half provided staff to fill key vacancies and build our capacity to also start documentation. It was a difficult year, but staff came together to get the work done. I can tell you that there are very dedicated staff working in the Office of Finance, and I'm so grateful for them. Adversity taught us the importance of collaboration. Robert Half was there helping fill our vacancy needs with qualified people. We have hired 6 of the contracted staff so far and have plans for others. Now that we are building up our capacity, we We needed to review the audit findings and ensure that we put systems in place to address the findings. Along came another partner that is a subsidiary of Robert Half, Protiviti. We met and strategized about the audit findings and created a plan for Protiviti staff to join us in addressing the findings and helping document procedures along the way. Together with our combined expertise, we are working to address material weaknesses found in the 2020-21 audit. One of the findings from 2021 was employee receivables, meaning when we are receiving funding back from an employee. To address this finding, standard operating procedures were created and are being followed, including those around program admission and withdrawal, billing, monitoring, amounts owed, sponsorship agreements, compliance, collection of amounts owed. Financial close and reporting was another finding. To address this finding, we have worked diligently with the help of Robert Half and our Human Resource Office to ensure we have adequate staffing. We have created a financial reporting checklist with tasks, timelines, and people responsible. We have created standard operating procedures and will continue to review and update both the SOPs and the checklist as we go along. The Department of Finance is reorganizing to separate corporate accounting from financial reporting. This will free up staff to be focused and to become experts in their area. Contract invoicing. We are providing extra professional development. We are adding a system of sampling invoices, much like the auditors would do, so that we can provide feedback to anyone that needs extra support and proper invoice approval process. We are looking into an accounts payable invoice system so that invoices would be submitted centrally and it would minimize the manual entry that is needed now. No valid license. Staff must be appropriately licensed to be charged to special education aid. Through the fall budget, a position was added to help the staff in HR that ensures license compliance. We are reorganizing the way we budget and charge for special education eligible costs to help us better monitor throughout the year instead of a manual year-end process. Medicaid. Staff have participated in professional development. We are ensuring more than one staff knows the Medicaid process. Medicaid vendors reviewed the standard operating procedures to ensure compliance. We have quarterly check-ins with the Medicaid vendors to ensure we are complying with requirements. When we knew about this finding, it was too late to fix a similar problem from fiscal year 23. So there could be another finding. However, staff are sure they understand and have given correct information to the auditors and are sure this will not be a problem going forward. Transportation. The Transportation Department worked with a consultant to create a technology solution for transportation reporting errors. The first year of the implementation, there was a slight glitch, but most of the findings were cleared. This year, we are hopeful these findings will be cleared altogether. The technology solution has also helped with timely reporting. Beyond working on audit findings, we are working towards strategic improvement, including using technology to be more efficient, looking at process improvements and documentation, and improving staff capacity to do work. Shelley Calandanthiel will now discuss strategic activities planned and completed.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, my name is Shelley Calandanthiel representing Protiviti. To augment the remarks from Martha, we have itemized the activities we have completed so far to date. And our partnership with Milwaukee Public Schools is holistic, covering people, process, and technology. Martha has mentioned some of these items already. On the people side, we have filled critical roles, filling gaps within the team, and rounding out the activities that the finance team collectively has to contribute to. We've also brought a project management framework so that these teams can work together to effectively achieve results. On the process side of things, we have documented and developed procedures for each of the roles to execute on some key items related to the grant area, as well as to support some of the remediation activities related to the findings that were just mentioned. On the technology side, discovery work has been completed within accounts payable, as well as creating a business incident report tracking for information technology incidents. In our experience, we typically see this as a 2-year journey. So on the right of the screen, you'll see phase 2, in which we have identified additional opportunities for continuing improvement. And it is with confidence, we believe the continued partnership with Milwaukee Public Schools is on the right track and will continue to enhance the overall people, process, and technology frameworks in 2024. Some of those things include examining the organizational structure, the tasks within, and equipping the employees of Milwaukee Public Schools within the finance organization with tools and technology, training and updates to the procedures and policies, as well as enhancing the capabilities within the systems that the finance team uses. In summary, I would categorize these in 3 top areas. One is standard operating procedures, clear definitions of roles and responsibilities, establishing a common calendar of routine activities to enhance controls and frameworks and allow for activities to be efficient and on time. And the third is business plus capabilities related to the finance team's enhanced reporting needs, as well as more efficient procedures. The next item is just a view of our roadmap of activities that have taken place since we commenced this partnership in May of 2023. As you can see, we have focused on some of the areas of remediation that were identified as part of the last audit. We've created policies, procedures. We've done several pieces of analysis and supported this team. And this last slide is just a roadmap looking ahead to 2024. We will partner with Milwaukee Public Schools financial leadership to establish this and formalize this in early January.
Thank you. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Mr. Chasen.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I think the output of the audit last time that prompted, I think, this type of an update, I just want to bring some visibility to a couple items and make sure the administration can provide us some feedback on updates on these specific points. The first one was that the auditor noted that MPS, the management, had not prepared financial statements in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles, or that the schedule of expenditures of federal and state awards, that they were in conformance with applicable state or federal requirements. In addition, they noted that material misstatements in the general ledger were identified during the financial audit and subsequently corrected upon being questioned as part of the audit process. They also noted that they identified significant difficulties during the audit, one of them being significant delays in management providing required information, the other being extensive unexpected effort required to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. And on those particular points, I was wondering if the administration could give us an update, especially with an audit, I think, currently going on. What should the board expect be sort of the output of this current audit with respect to those items?
Administration.
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Matt Chasen, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. With that item, we have, one of the things we addressed was staffing. We had staffing vacancies, and the auditors did recognize that that was part of the issue. So we have worked with Robert Half to make sure that we have filled vacancies and also have staff that's come alongside us to provide extra expertise and support. We have created this checklist. We've worked with the auditors and we're going to continue to work with the auditors to make sure that the listing they give us of audit items is complete, so we know what to turn in and when. And we, this year compared to last year, have met most of all of our deadlines. Now, as we're trying to wrap up the audit, things have got a little more difficult as we close out the financial reporting. But as far as all the things that led up to this, because we start back in May, and things are due to the auditors throughout summer, throughout fall, we made all of those deadlines. So we have a vast improvement over last year. And we expect even more improvement next year as we work on building efficiencies through our technology. And we have clear plans for that, but haven't been able to implement yet as we are trying to close out this audit first.
Any follow-up, Mr. Jason? Director Jackson?
What was the cause to bridge this kind of oversight?
Administration?
Chair Garcia, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. What was the cause?
Yes.
What caused all this to happen? Or so I think, I guess I'll go back to the pandemic, which really changed the way we work. And people were remote for a long time. When we came back together, people saw opportunities because not everyone was coming back to work to find other positions elsewhere because there was many openings. And some of those places had openings where you could be remote. At the time, we did not have remote work. So that was something especially finance staff saw as an attraction. So people took other positions for more pay, for remote work, for various reasons. And these were experienced staff that had a lot of knowledge and were higher level staff that actually did all the auditing work. So it created quite a gap, a knowledge gap. We thought we had standard operating procedures that we could review those and help fill the knowledge gap, but found that they probably weren't as good as we thought, that people that had all the knowledge in their head were filling in the gaps.
Follow-up? Good?
No, good, yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Directors on board.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I guess one maybe question or concern that I have is around contract in the contract invoicing corrective action. I know it says that, we're doing professional development, we're going to, sample contracts that have been invoiced, review by contract sponsor. I'm just wondering, are there models out there that have a more independent review of contracts than the contract sponsor themselves? Or can you just explain what our invoicing process is if we have more oversight than just the contract sponsor reviewing?
Chair Garcia, Director Zambor, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. As far as the invoices, people should be checking that the rate that's being charged is what's in the contract, and that agrees that, for example, if it's staff that you're paying to come in, that they work the hours that you agreed on and that you're invoiced for those hours and nothing more. And if it's a product you're buying, that you received all those products for the price that was agreed upon. So making sure that staff do that across the whole district, whether you're at a school or central service, is very difficult to be held accountable for. And that's why we are identifying accounts payable software that will help us. We have identified one that the company has worked with our vendor for Business Plus is our financial system so that it can be integrated into the financial system. And this way vendors can submit the invoices into a central place. It actually uses AI to help put these invoices then right into our financial system. And in the process, it also will look at checking, doing that three-way match where is it matching what was in the contract or the purchase order, the price? Did we receive the quantity we said? And it'll help us with that matching. So it's more of a technology solution than a person having to do all this.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how, okay, like looking at the contract that I was asking Mr. Kane about, where we're doing work at various sites, but the contract's not outlining the various sites that they're supposed to do work at. So then how, like, who is doing the oversight of that contract to make sure that the vendor didn't get paid $137,000 for 2 sites, or that they're actually meeting maybe what was in the RFP? I'm just wondering, I just want to make sure that there's something in place that's not the person bringing the contract forward to actually do the oversight, and that there's an extra check there.
Administration?
Chair Garcia, Director Zombor, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We also have our accounts payable that looks at the invoices and makes sure that that we're following processes, and they're independent of the sponsors.
President Herndon.
Thank you very much. Along the lines with the invoicing and the issues that developed with that, you said that you have an electronic system now and using technology. My question would be, how is it integrated, or is it integrated at all with the other systems? Because I know in the past we've had a problem with that, and if that problem exists, then that creates a body has to get in there to enter the data or transport it from one system to the other. So that would be my first question.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We haven't started using the system yet. We've just identified it. So we looked at several systems and have identified the one that we think would work, but they're working with our technology group now to make sure that it can be fully integrated. Other organizations have used this system with Business Plus. In fact, we talked with the Business Plus people to help us, advise us on a system that could integrate with them, the financial system we use.
Any follow-up?
Yes. It sounds like you said that with the help of Robert Half, you're going to be developing processes and procedures. My question would be, can you provide those processes and procedures to the Board of Directors? Because when we get these audits, for good, bad, or indifferent, we don't necessarily know who we should hold responsible for dropping the ball, if that should be the case. And then at the same time, the people that are doing the processing from their individual departments, if you will, how do they connect with accounts receivables or payables, for that matter, so that we can reduce the incidents that tend to occur simply because I know the district is not all integrated technology-wise, and I think that that causes a lot of the problem. So I would like to see where the board becomes more informed, because the board changes like every 2 years, and we tend to work in the dark in relation to this type of thing, which is so critical to the operation of the district. So we as a board need to be more knowledgeable about this as well. And that's it.
Administration.
Chair Garcia, Director Herndon, members of the committee. As it relates to the audit or whatever standard operating procedures you'd like to see, we'd be happy to share that. We do have many, so if you want to limit it more towards the audit findings, that might help you review them.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any members of the public that want to make comments?
We did have a speaker slip for this item, Madam Chair.
All right, if Ms. Sheila Tompkins Dot is here? I believe she left, okay. Is there any other comments or questions? All right, what is the pleasure of the committee in regards to this item?
Madam Chair, this was an informational item, so no action is required.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much to all of the team. I know it's a lot of things to look at, synthesize, and analyze, and I think that we're all leaving a little bit more informed, which is a big step forward, so thank you. All right, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 16, a report with possible action on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Task Force. Madam Chair, due to unforeseen circumstances, some of the presenters are unavailable tonight. Therefore, the administration has asked for this item to be withdrawn.
All right, thank you for that, and we look forward to having this item in a future meeting. So, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 17, action on a request for an early start date for Ronald Wilson Reagan College Preparatory High School, Rufus King International High School, Casimir Pulaski High School, and McDowell Montessori School for the 2024-25 school year. The administration recommends that this item be forwarded to the board without a recommendation.
All right, do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions?
Yeah, so, I don't know, I'm confused. We just talked about the early calendar before, right? So now we're about to talk about possibly an early start with just these particular schools. Okay. I'm ready to listen.
Yes, we do have members of the public that wish to make comments. We'll start off with Jack Lepesti.
You had it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Administration, can you present the item?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, the item before you, we put this item on the agenda because we did not know what the vote would be with the board. So, and if we did anything different, we would need to have this taken care of. So we have to make that request, and that's the reason we asked that the administration just forward this to the full board, you know, so at the full board, if there's any decision that's rendered, this option will still be an option that's on the table.
Thank you. All right, committee members, do you have any questions? Any comments?
No.
All right, so then we'll go into the public comment. So we have Jack Lepesti. Are they here? No? All right. Anna Bernhardt? No? Melissa Rickey?
Hello, Director Garcia and fellow board members. Thank you for hearing me out again. My name is Melissa Rickey, R-I-C-K-E-Y. I just wanted to comment briefly on the list of schools that are included on this waiver because Golda Meir is not listed. And I take issue with that. There was a speaker earlier who mentioned that only 10% of students take AP courses, but that is not the case at Golda. Half of my juniors take AP English language with me. The other half would, but they're taking AP Seminar and AP Bio during those hours. So we have more AP courses than any other school in MPS. And while I brag about Golda and can talk about it all day, I want to recognize that there are many AP schools that are not listed that deserve to be on the early start calendar as well. I feel it's very short-sighted to include just the IB students as opposed to the IB and the AP students in this exemption. I also want to mention too, we compete directly with some non-MPS schools that do begin in August. One of our competitors is a private school that is religious that's located in a neighborhood that I live near. And what we found is that those students would then have an additional couple of weeks that our students do not have. And when we're looking at competitive data, it's unfair, again, to match our MPS students against students from the suburbs and private schools who have this additional time and perhaps even more preparation prior to coming into the high school AP courses. I wanted to comment earlier on the transparency of the calendar survey. I found it disheartening that the August 26th date didn't appear to be a real option, as we can't move the entire district to that start date, because I think that that was a fair compromise. Ideally not my first choice, but I think in terms of our students, we'll take what we can get in terms of preparation. I want to speak to the transportation comment earlier. There was mention that we would save $2 million on transportation, but if we have 2 calendars anyway, I think that that becomes a moot point. And if we're going to have trouble getting bus drivers, then let us try to get routes for all of the AP students as well as the IB schools. Finally, in terms of the Office of Academics, Advanced Academics, we're asking them then to split the calendar in terms of their PD and offerings between the IB schools, which fall under that realm, and the AP schools. So now they've also got 2 calendars, serving the same types of students in high achievement. Finally, I wanted to mention too, in my background in gifted education, one of the things we learn is that the importance of access to opportunity is what empowers our students to find out what they're good at. By giving our kids access to these opportunities in AP courses as well as IB courses, our students are empowered not only to be successful here, but it also gives them the ability to save time and money when it comes to college. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We also have Owen Driscoll.
Thank you.
Today, sorry.
Owen Driscoll, D as in David, Riscoll. Good evening, Dr. Posley, members of the board. Special welcome to Dr. Smith as well. If a unified calendar starting before September 1st is not an option, why was it presented as one? I'm aware of Wisconsin State Statute, section 118.045. I was under the impression that MPS was as well, and had already reached an agreement with DPI. People were hopeful that their kids would finally be on the same schedule. This lack of transparency is unfortunately a common practice of MPS. This needs to change. I ask for you to keep the current calendar with IB and AP on early start for another year while issues with DPI are resolved. Additionally, what are the finances for Saturday classes? This sounds like it would create a more complex schedule, not a unified one. Again, how would busing work? This does not seem to be a well thought out or serious idea. As Mr. Farrick and Dr. Nims have already stated, there are contracts that need to be finalized. We do not want these contracts to be rushed due to a lack of transparency. The uncertainty caused by this lack of transparency hurts our whole district. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members on the online platform?
We had 2 individuals registered for the virtual platform. The first speaker is Tracy Rosh. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your testimony. Tracy Rosh. She may have left the platform. The next speaker is Katie Grabowski. Katie Grabowski. She may have left the platform as well. Those were the only 2 virtual speakers.
Perfect. For folks that maybe you were expecting to go on earlier, please email us your comments, and they will come before us. If you do email them to the governance email address. All right. Do any committee members have any comments or questions?
No, just once again, I appreciate your input, definitely giving me more information to think about as well. And also, Owen, there wasn't no attack earlier when I was saying the district. Okay, just making sure we clear.
Excellent. So then what is the pleasure of the committee in regards to this item?
Yeah, all right.
I mean, we can adopt it, put it along without a recommendation.
I move that we move this item forward to the full board without recommendation.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, question. So why would we move this full board item and not the initial one to the full board with the calendar? The director's on board, yeah.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. My understanding was that this item is only, the administration was only intended this item for us to take action on this item if the traditional calendar vote at the full board meeting doesn't go through the way it did tonight. So they need to be able to request the waiver from DPI, so they need it on the agenda for the full board meeting. I shouldn't be speaking for administration, but I'm trying to make sure that we have this on the full board item in case it's needed. But I don't think the intent was for us to take action on it tonight.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is correct. And we have to have a waiver in by the end of the year. And if we did not bring it, with this item, as an agenda on this item, we wouldn't be able to do it by the end of the calendar year.
Does that clarify your question?
It does.
Okay, perfect.
Just one more question related to it as well. So in picking these schools, what was the process or elimination of other schools not added to the list?
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this predates the early start calendar, when they started to do this, and it was just those list of IB schools. And so when our new IB schools come on, they was just added to the list. So this predates that particular time, and it also is a part of the waiver that we have in place currently that we're using as far as IB schools.
Do you need any clarification?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, so then what is the pleasure of the committee in respect to this item?
Madam Chair, you have a motion by Director Zombor to advance the item to the full board with no recommendation.
All right. So will the secretary please call the roll?
On that motion, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Garcia.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
All right, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Well, there being no further business before the committee, this meeting is adjourned.